Okay, I think this is working now. I think everybody can hear me. I think we're all set. I've been testing some of the technical stuff out. So I think we are set to go. Okay, we're all set and let's get rolling. Good evening. It's Thursday evening, October 30th, 2025. I'm Brian Schott. Welcome to the show. This is What the Heck is Happening in Utah Politics. I am the publisher and managing editor of the independent website UtahPoliticalWatch.news. I'm an independent journalist. I've been covering politics here in Utah for more than 25 years. And so I'm here tonight to talk about what's been happening in the news this week and to take your questions, your comments, anything you'd like to chat about. Go ahead and leave it in the chat. We are live tonight on TikTok. We are live on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and LinkedIn. So if you have any questions this evening, please leave them in the chat. I would love to hear from you. Okay, so what has been happening in Utah politics? Well, we've spent the last few times that we've been doing this, the last few live streams, has been focused pretty much on what's been happening with the entire redistricting fiasco, the redistricting process. And we're still not done. The judge is set to pick a new map, either the map passed by the legislature or one of the two maps proposed by the plaintiffs, and she has to have that done by November 10th. There is a court hearing scheduled for next week, and this court hearing will be on the part of the case where the plaintiff sued to block the law that the legislature passed at the last second to basically rig the process of the redistricting, rig the redistricting process so that the judge had no choice but to select their map. Basically making the gerrymander that they passed in option C, making it so the judge would have to pick it. And so we have a hearing over that next week on the 5th. And then after that, I'm guessing the judge will make her decision on the map, hopefully before the 10th, because the map has to be in place by the 10th. So we should see a decision probably sometime next week. And then the appeals process starts. So I don't think we're completely out of the woods yet. And don't forget, the Utah legislature, the last time we came on here, the Utah Republican Party, the last time we came on here, they had just decided to drop their effort for an indirect initiative to overturn the map, Prop 4, the independent redistricting ballot initiative that voters passed in 2018. They decided to drop that, and now they are collecting signatures for a direct initiative to hopefully put it on the ballot, or possibly put it on the ballot by 2026. And we can go over that again. I don't really think there's much new to talk about in that space, but there are a lot of other stories that have happened in Utah politics over the last week that I think are worth discussing. Let's start with the big story in the New York Times, a very large story about the homeless facility that they're going to be building on the outskirts of Salt Lake City. That will be meant to house 1,300 people, homeless people. Supporters are calling it a service campus, and detractors say it looks like a detention camp. And this is essentially what the Trump administration wants to do. If you have not read the story on the New York Times, it's really great. State planners say that this site will be designed to treat addiction and mental illness and provide a humane alternative to the streets. I'm reading from the New York Times article here. where afflictions often go untreated and people die at alarming rates. They're also vowing stern measures to move homeless people to the remote site and force many of them to undergo treatment. And this has been a bone of contention between the legislature and Salt Lake City for quite some time. If you remember, there was a letter earlier this year that went from legislative leaders, House Speaker Mike Schultz, Senate President Stuart Adams, to Mayor Aaron Mendenhall of Salt Lake City, basically saying, fix it or we're going to step in. Well, it looks like they're getting ready to step in here. So, in many places in Utah, outdoor sleeping has already been banned. And, planners say that this facility will also hold hundreds of mentally ill homeless people under court-ordered civil commitment, involuntary commitment. And the effort will include a, quote, accountability center for those with addictions. What do you think about this? What do you think about building a very large homeless facility to house the homeless, treatment facility, forced treatment for many who are mentally ill and don't want to get treatment, involuntary commitment? What do you think about this? Is this something the state has been doing? Do you think that that this is a last resort? Is this the only option left for the state after years of battles over what to do about homelessness? We've seen a number of cities around the state. One of the things that has happened, and this has been a fight for a long time, is that other cities have been content to just let Salt Lake City carry the burden of the homeless, of caring for the homeless population. Other cities have fought tooth and nail to open up their own facilities, even after the state mandated it. They didn't want to do that. There was a battle up north in Fruit Heights last year. If you remember, there was a homeless facility that was going to open near a church in sort of an industrial area, and there was a lot of controversy, and it got scrapped because a lot of residents did not want to have that around their house. And so now we've got this large campus. It's going to cover 16 acres, house up to 1,300 people. And critics are rightly pointing out that we already have a shortage of psychiatric beds, of people to help treat mental illness. And so you wonder if they're going to be able to get the kind of care that they need. And at the same time, the federal government is making deep cuts to Medicare. The state is going to be dealing with what to do with that. And a lot of it is, if the federal government cuts Medicare, the state is also going to cut Medicare. If you remember, voters approved Medicaid expansion back in 2018 through a ballot initiative. But part of it was, if those federal dollars ever dried up, then the state will cut services accordingly. Old Dad says on TikTok, warming center was abandoned in Fruit Heights. Yes, that's what we were talking. So I was just talking about. It was a warming center in Fruit Heights, and people who lived in Fruit Heights did not want to house that facility there. Anyway, this is a tremendous article by the New York Times. They are talking about, they really go deep and dig into the issues surrounding this facility. I would go read it if you can. At the same time, a day after that article came out, Governor Spencer Cox went running to the Deseret News to make his argument that this homeless campus out near the airport, he says funding it is his top priority for the 2026 legislative session. And if you read it, it's right in the second paragraph of this article that he's pushing back against the New York Times article. It's called Damage Control, and he ran to a friendly news outlet, which is the Deseret News. And his quote is, "This idea that it's compared to Nazi Germany, I don't understand that level of thinking. It's just crazy to me," Cox said. As if Hitler were to round up people who were dying on the streets in their own filth, addicted to drugs, and giving them the support they need. There is no comparison at all. I mean, it does raise significant civil liberties issues, but I think that state leaders, Spencer Cox, Speaker Mike Schultz, President Stuart Adams, are so desperate to find a solution of some sort that, they're willing to push those civil liberties issues aside. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts about that. Old Dad on TikTok says, "Freeze and leave, not in our backyard." Back to the Fruit Heights argument. Yes, I remember that. It was. You hear people talking about how they have to do something about homelessness. You have to find a solution, but nobody is willing to step up and do it. They're, as I said, they have been content for years to let Salt Lake City take the brunt of this. I think that Utah County, they put up a huge fight to when there was a bill passed a couple of years ago requiring all the cities along the Wasatch Front to at least have warming centers for homeless people when the temperatures outside are really bad. And Utah County also fought that tooth and nail. Davis County fought it tooth and nail. They don't want this. They're content to let Salt Lake City take the brunt of it. Going through some of the comments on TikTok. Old Dad, "It would be good if I thought it would be humane and let themselves and let themselves go voluntarily." And that's part of it. There's a lot of it that is going to be involuntary commitment. But this is what the Trump administration has been advocating for when it comes to treating the homeless. Scott Rock says, "Seems like these resources could be better allocated. Housing is part, but what if we offered free health care, including mental health?" Well, that's socialism, Scott. We ain't going to do that. Got to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Can't afford it. A lot of people would point at the... you could point at the fact that the legislature has cut taxes by almost $1 billion over the 4 years, but that would have nothing to... That would not alleviate any of the money crunch for this, because Utah, the way the budget is set up, money for income taxes from individuals and businesses can only go to fund higher education, public education, and some social services for disabled residents. So don't point at the tax cuts. There's really, the budget is tight because, everything else has to be funded from sales taxes and fees, and those areas of the budget. So money is tight, so it's kind of hard to do that, but there's absolutely no way to do free health care. Can't afford it. I love that. It's actually cheaper to take care of people. Scott, you're not wrong, Scott. You're not wrong. There have been studies that show when you do take care of people, when you provide health care, the money that goes into it actually, you get much more of a benefit than what comes out. But that's not where the legislature wants to spend their money. Their big pushes this year are going to be this homeless center. That's going to be one of the big, there's this homeless facility. That'll be one of their big pushes this year. And if you haven't been paying attention to the media blitz that's been coming from someone on YouTube says audio. I think the audio is just fine. Everyone else can hear me. Anyway, if you look at this, at the blitz that has been coming from the legislature, especially the House of Representatives, and we're going to get to all that in a second because I wrote a story about that this week. But they're really focused on trying to find ways to lower gas prices. Anyway, want to hear your thoughts, want to hear your comments, leave them in the chat. We're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. LinkedIn, Twitch. Thank you so much for joining tonight. Scott Rock says, I know, I get it that it's never happening. Sad. That's what's the saying? Your budget is a reflection of your values. What your government spends money on is what they value. In the past few years, it's been tax cuts and roads. And they're going to be spending a lot of money on getting ready for the 2032 Olympics. I'm sure there's going to be some significant plans to improve roads, build new roads. That was the big push right before the 2002 Olympics. I was here for that. If you were here for that, you remember there was just wall-to-wall construction all the time. I don't think we have to do as much infrastructure building as we did the last time, but there will be some of that. Old Dad New Trick says, what are you hearing about a Salt Lake County property tax increase? Seems like Wilson isn't reading the room. I don't know which way the county council is going to go on that. I do know that the other night, the Republican members of the county council surprised everyone and voted to eliminate 4 after-school care centers, 4 daycare centers that were operated by the county at county facilities. And I heard from a number of parents who reached out to me when that happened, saying that it's going to put them in a bind because it was low-cost childcare. That, things are really expensive. I remember when I had to pay for childcare for my children, and they're both grown now. They're both in their 20s. But back when that happened, that was a real strain on the budget. I know how hard it is to pay for childcare. And when you were able to get childcare through the county at these county facilities for $400 or $500 a month per child, and now they're going to have to go to private facilities where the cost is going to jump to probably $1,300 to $1,500 a month per child, maybe more. That's a real bite out of your budget. And I don't know a lot of families that can absorb, an extra $500 to $800 a month per child. And if you have more than one child, then that doubles or triples. That's a lot of money. And at the same time, SNAP benefits are ending, or they won't be paid out this month. We did get a press release from the legislature and legislative leaders saying that they're putting $4 million of state money to support Utahns. They're giving $4 million to food banks, which is a very good move. I know that, Mumbai House over in Salt Lake City, over by on Foothill, they're offering free food for people who can't feed themselves because SNAP benefits are expiring or they won't be paid out next month because of the government shutdown. And that's a good thing. But, this is a program that the government was providing, much like the child care. And now it's been ripped out from underneath them. Going through some more of the comments. Aaron, I can't pronounce your name there, Aaron, on TikTok, but you said, have you heard about the homeless slave camp they want to build here? We just talked about that for the first 15 minutes of the show, Aaron. I will be putting a replay of this up on YouTube tomorrow. It'll also be available in a podcast form, so you'll be able to catch up on that. Old Dad New Trick says, my mother on fixed income can't afford the tax hike. There's a lot of people who can't afford the tax hike. And that's a lot of the property taxes go to pay for not only for county services, but they also pay for schools. That's where a lot of schools, not through the county necessarily, it's through the local levy. But that's one of the other ways that they pay for schools. But yes, these tax hikes, and Salt Lake County is somewhere around, I think, 20 to 30%. The number's escaping me right now, but that is a significant hit. It really is. And if we head into a recession, as a lot of people are predicting, it's going to be really, really tough for a lot of people. I grew up in the 70s and 80s. I vaguely remember how tough it was during the economic malaise of the Carter years. I vaguely remember that, but I don't know. We've got a lot of Americans who have never been uncomfortable, and that is or never struggled before, and maybe we're heading into a time where they might be struggling. Who knows? All right, love to hear more of your comments, more of your questions. Leave them in the chat. We can discuss that. Other things on my list to discuss tonight as I bring this up. So I mentioned this earlier, but I wrote a story earlier this week, and I don't know if you saw it. It was part of my morning memo. But over the weekend, House Speaker Mike Schultz put a video on social media talking about the gerrymandering case, talking about the gerrymandering lawsuit and the judge. And in it, he vaguely threatened the judge. He did not name her, but he accused 3rd District Judge Diana Gibson of judicial activism and legislating from the bench for her ruling that struck down the congressional maps, and that's why they have to draw a new one. This video, it's very slickly produced. It's Schultz talking directly to the camera. There is stock footage for B-roll that they use, soft focus in the background, very professionally done. Taxpayers are paying for that. Earlier this year, I reported that this was part of a taxpayer-funded PR campaign that's costing taxpayers about $6,000 a month. They're paying this money to a company called, the name is escaping me all of a sudden. Northbound Strategy, sorry. Northbound Strategy. They're paying this money to Northbound Strategy, about $6,000 a month. And they've been doing this for a number of years, but after Schultz became Speaker in 2023, that's when they really ramped up these videos. And if you look at it, this video is shot and produced almost exactly the same way as all these other videos from Northbound Strategies, where it's Schultz talking directly to the camera, soft focus on the background, and talking about whatever priority issue is important to him or whatever he wants to sell. He recently did one that was also about lowering gas prices and what the legislature is going to do with that. These videos produced by this company, Northbound Strategies. It's two people, Marty Carpenter, who is a former television journalist, and he worked in the Gary Herbert administration for a number of years, and now he's also a lobbyist, but runs this Northbound Strategies company along with Wesley Smith, who also worked in the Herbert administration. Wesley Smith also has been a lobbyist. I don't know if his license is still current. But these videos, the distribution pattern is very odd for something that is being paid for by the taxpayers. Because when these videos are released, they don't go on any of the House official channels. They're not posted to the House Majority's YouTube channel. They're not on their Twitter account. They go on Schultz's personal social media first. You'll see it on his Twitter. You'll see it on his Instagram. You'll see it on his Facebook. And then the House official channels, the ones, for the House Majority, they will repost it and amplify it. But they go on Schultz's first. They're also posted to Northbound Strategies YouTube. They run a website that kind of looks like a news website, but it's not. And they have a number of contracts with state entities. They get money from the University of Utah, Weber State, Sandy City, and you will see those officials doing similar videos talking about their policy priorities. This firm promotes thought leadership. They're trying to get these videos out there and help set the conversation and set their clients up or present their clients as some sort of leader in the firm, in the field. But taxpayers are paying for this. When I first reported this story earlier this year and got a hold of some of the contracts, I reached out to Marty Carpenter and I said, what exactly are you doing? What exactly are you providing to the legislature for $6,000 a month? And Carpenter said, we're not going to talk about it. I'm not going to let you know anything about this. So you're paying for it, but they won't tell anybody how they're spending that money, what that money is going for. And this firm, since 2023, has been paid $215,000 from the legislature. And that's taxpayer money. It doesn't come from any of the PACs that are operated by Speaker Schultz, and he has at least two of them. He's got his House Speaker Leadership PAC, and then there's another PAC that is to help Republicans in the House get elected. They don't pay for it. Taxpayers do. This is part of the actual budget. This is a communication strategy. When I first reported it, there are at least 4 full-time staffers in the House who have the word communications in their title, at least at the time they did. I haven't checked recently, but when I first reported this story, there were 4 full-time employees in the House of Representatives here in Utah who had the word communications in their title in some form. But yet they need to spend another $6,000 a month at least paying this outside firm to produce these videos that, by the way, nobody watches. They get a handful of views. I've seen some get maybe 200-300 views on YouTube. They don't do a lot of traffic on social media. There's just not a lot of impressions, and I don't know what the ROI is. And I'm never going to find out what the ROI is because they won't tell me, even though it's taxpayer money. Scott Rock says, most critical Helldiver's path to prioritize for someone just jumping in. I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that, but I could talk about Helldivers all day long. I actually play with my kids almost every night. We get on and cause a lot of mayhem, which is the draw of the game. Old Dad New Trick says, taxes paying for GOP propaganda pieces. Essentially, yeah. Essentially, that's what is going on here. They seem designed, these videos seem designed to provide or to boost Speaker Schultz's personal profile. And it just so happens he's probably getting ready to run for governor in 2028. Scott Rock says, cause a lot of democracy, you mean? Yes. Yes. And if anybody wants to friend me on Helldivers, send me a DM and I will give you my friend code. And we can spread democracy together. Actually, that's my shirt tonight. I don't know if you can see it here. But let me see if I can see it on the camera. I'll back up a little bit here. But it says, hug, spread democracy. I don't know if you can see that. Anyway. A few other things to discuss. We've had some campaign finance shenanigans because you know the election is next week. It's on Tuesday. If you haven't gotten your ballot in, do so. He said, knowing that he has not filled out his ballot yet. Eric Biggert says, do we actually know how much Schultz is worth? Heard it could be near $1 billion. I don't think we know. He owns a lot of companies. He made a lot of money in the construction business. He does have a private jet that he co-owns with someone else. One of my favorite stories that's come out of that is right after the pandemic, there was a meeting, I believe it was NCSL, National Conference of State Legislatures, and they were meeting in Florida, and there was a huge fight to see which members of the House got to fly down there, which members of the legislature got to fly down there on Schultz's private jet rather than fly commercial. And everybody who was on the jet got COVID. Julie Trombator says, I can barely hear you. I'll turn it up here a little bit, see if that might help. Maybe if I do this. That might be helpful. But yeah, everybody who was on the jet, on Schultz's jet, flying down to Florida, got COVID, which was kind of hilarious. So there have been some campaign finance shenanigans that have happened in the last week. A couple of stories that I wrote. The first one, there is a super PAC, a national super PAC that has waded into a local school board race here in Utah, down in the Aspen Peaks School Board, the newly created Aspen Peaks School Board. There was a mailer and a text message that went out last week attacking one of the candidates, Stacey Bateman, and promoting her opponent, Steve Sparty, in the election that is on Tuesday. Never mind that these mailers and text messages misspelled Stacey Bateman's first name. Anyway, the PAC is called the Liberty Champions PAC, and that's the same PAC. As I later found out, it's the same PAC, but it's the same PAC that dropped $1.6 million into Utah to support Senator Mike Lee during his 2022 reelection bid. That's a lot of money that came in. So why would a PAC that spent that amount of money on Senator Mike Lee to help him win re-election in 2022, why are they worried about a local school board race in Alpine? That's a very good question. Now, I've written about this Liberty Champions PAC before, and I found the connection. At least I can make a very strong case about the connection. So after I found out about these mailers and this text message that went out attacking Stacey Bateman, I reached out to the person in charge of this PAC. He's a gentleman by the name of Thomas Datweiler. He is a treasurer for the PAC, and he is the treasurer for a lot of Republican campaigns or Republican committees. He first came to prominence when he was listed as the treasurer for the campaign of former Representative George Santos. His name was taken off that fairly quickly after everyone started to report it, but he was the treasurer. He's also the treasurer for Senator Mike Lee's campaign and his leadership PAC and his joint fundraising committee, and for a few other PACs that have operated here in the state. So I reached out to Datweiler and I said, hey, there's this PAC that's using the name Liberty Champions, and here's the address. Do you know anything about it? The first thing he said to me is, that's not us. That is not us at all. And I couldn't confirm that or not because this PAC had not registered with the state. If you're going to spend money here in the state, if you're going to spend money on elections as a PAC, you have to register with the state, and they had not registered. So I reached out to Datweiler. I said, is this you? He said, no, that's not us. A few hours later, Liberty Champions registers with the state, and it's Thomas Datweiler who is listed as the treasurer. So it was them. But again, why would they be interested in this local school board race? And why did Datweiler know nothing about it? Well, here's the connection. Liberty Champions, after spending $1.6 million in 2022 to support Senator Mike Lee, completely sat out the 2024 election cycle. They did not support any candidates. They spent money, but they didn't support any candidates. Most of their money went for administrative costs and consulting. Datwyler's firm got money for keeping records and filing with the FEC. It's a pretty good business, and I'm sure he makes a lot of money doing that because he does it for so many committees. But they also paid about $33,000 to a consulting firm called L4 Consulting. That has a Utah address, but they were formed in Wyoming. Don't really know anything about L4 Consulting. There's not a lot of information available about it. If you look up their address, if you look up their filing in Wyoming, business filing, it goes back to an address in Cedar City that belongs to a law firm that helps companies set up LLCs. And there are dozens, if not hundreds, of companies around the country that trace back to this address. So, but there is a gentleman by the name of Dan Hauser who is in charge of L4 Consulting. That's his company. It's on his LinkedIn page, and Hauser has been joined at the hip with Senator Mike Lee since he first was elected to Congress. He ran Mike Lee's first campaign in 2010. He's been a staffer for Lee. He actually was on Lee's payroll for a little while between 2023 and 2024, earned almost $100,000 on his official Senate payroll as chief strategist. So Dan Hauser and Mike Lee joined at the hip. And Dan Hauser owns L4 Communications. And on his LinkedIn page, where he talks about being in charge of L4 Communications, he lists Liberty Champions as one of his clients. And Liberty Champions is involved in this school race in Alpine, the Aspen Peak School District. Well, it turns out that Dan Hauser lives in Alpine. In fact, he lives in the newly created Aspen Peak School District. He doesn't live in this exact seat where Stacey Bateman and Steve Sparty are vying for the seat, but he lives in that school district. I'm pretty sure that's why this PAC that has done things nationally, has done things on a national scale, on a statewide scale in Utah, got involved in this local school board race. And it's kind of clear that Hauser didn't tell Thomas Datwyler what he was doing, because it certainly seemed like a surprise to Datwyler when I reached out to him and said, "What is Liberty Champions PAC doing in this school board race?" And Datwyler was like, "That's not us." Well, it was, because they filed with the state a few hours later. And that's just how interconnected all of this is. There's another PAC called Constitutional Conservatives Super PAC. They got involved in the 2024 Republican primary race between Representative Celeste Malloy and Colby Jenkins. They spent almost $500,000 on that race, supporting Colby Jenkins. Mike Lee endorsed Colby Jenkins before the convention, campaigned for him, raised money for him, supported him throughout that. This Constitutional Conservative Super PAC also jumped into the race to attack Malloy and support Jenkins. Jenkins almost won that. Well, the treasurer for Constitutional Conservatives PAC, it's Thomas Datwyler. And they just so happened to pay about $300,000 in consulting fees during that race to who? L4 Consulting, Dan Hauser. So it's this whole network that is connected to Senator Mike Lee. And a lot of people, he's got a lot of sway in this state. A lot of people owe their jobs to him. The current chair of the Utah Republican Party, Rob Axson, he was a staffer for Senator Lee for years in his office. Attorney General Derek Brown, he left the Utah legislature to go work for Senator Lee in Washington. Then he came back to be a lobbyist. There's a reason why Senator Lee, Rob Axson, and Attorney General Brown have all signed on as sponsors of this ballot initiative to overturn Proposition 4, the anti-gerrymandering law. They're all connected to Senator Lee. That's his network. That's how expansive it is. Scott Rock says, necessary evil. How do we get rid of outsized money influences? Something has to be done about Citizens United. These are dark money groups. This PAC, the Liberty Champions PAC, they are a dark money group. They've had some controversy. During the 2022 U.S. Senate campaign, their largest donor was Timothy Mellon. He's the heir to the Mellon banking dynasty. He gave half a $1 million to them. Mellon is the person who was behind that anonymous, and I'm putting anonymous in quotes, anonymous $130 million donation to help the Trump administration pay the troops during the shutdown. Last year, there was a story, actually it was in 2023, there was a story from Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington. It didn't get a lot of attention. It should have gotten more attention than it did. It's kind of a shocking story, but they looked at some documents in the trial of Sam Bankman-Fried. Remember the crypto scammer who was convicted and is now in jail? They were looking at the documents and found a spreadsheet that seemed to link a $100,000 donation from FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried's company, to a nonprofit. And then that nonprofit turns around and gives $100,000 to the Liberty Champions PAC. And the spreadsheet they found in these court documents talked about money that was going from FTX to support political candidates. And this $100,000 was earmarked for a candidate named Lee. It's not hard to connect those dots. But that is all dark money flowing into politics. And the only thing that's going to stop that is if anybody does anything about Citizens United, and I don't think that that's going to happen. In fact, things are going in the other direction. There's so much incentive for this dark money that's untraceable. They don't have to disclose donors. And now you're seeing it not only filter into the state, into our congressional elections, into our legislative elections, but a dark money group is involved in a local school board race here in Utah because one of the people who works with this super PAC just happens to live there. And it's a great way to hide who's giving money. You remember last year there was a mailer, these really nasty anti-transgender mailers that went out targeting Democrats in legislative races. And there was a PAC. We didn't know much about it. They had registered with the state, but they didn't disclose any donors. They were registered as actually a corporation in Delaware. And there was no disclosure. We didn't know anything about it. And then after the election was over, it turns out the person who funded that entire operation was House Speaker Mike Schultz, who donated a bunch of money to send out these mailers attacking Democratic candidates in the legislature. No disclosure until after the election. And you just don't know where this money is coming from. And right now, the rewards for allowing dark money, for using dark money, are so much greater than doing anything about getting rid of it. People don't want to disarm. Would anybody actually unilaterally disarm? That's what you're asking them to do, and I don't think that that's going to happen. I published another story today that was it was a lot of fun for me to dig into. I love investigating these things. I love connecting dots. And there's a candidate. Again, this is a local race, but I think it's important to understand just how this stuff works. In Ogden City Council race, for an open seat, I think it's in seat 1. There is a candidate named Jace Reineveld who's running against Flor Lopez. And these candidates had to disclose their donors this week. That was the 7 days before the election, the deadline. And when you looked at Jace Reineveld's donation, his donations, his financial disclosure, he got almost $15,000 from a PAC. And that was a problem because in Ogden, city council candidates can only accept up to $1,500 from a single person. $1,500 per person to a candidate. That's all that you can donate. But this PAC rolls in, this PAC called Taxpayers PAC, and they donated almost $1,500 to his campaign. I reached out. I said, hey, this seems to be above and beyond what is allowed. And the Ogden city election officials told me that Reineveld's campaign was attempting to argue that the definition of person does not apply to a PAC. They were trying to use a loophole. They were saying the law says a person can only donate $1,500, but that doesn't mean a PAC. But unfortunately for them, Utah election law specifically says that the definition of person includes a political action committee. So he's going to have to give a bunch of the money back. Trying to use a loophole. But that's not the end of the story. That's not the end of the story, and I encourage you to go read it at utahpoliticalwatch.news. It's free. I didn't put that one behind a paywall. But that's not the end of the story, because this whole funding, this PAC, this money that went from the PAC to Jace Reineveld's campaign, it was part of a scheme to route this money that was above the campaign donation limits into his campaign, above the legal limit, but it was also an attempt to obscure the source of the money. Because if you go to Taxpayers PAC and look at their financial disclosures, the money came, there's been a few donations, but the biggest donation was for $15,000 from a man named David Reese. So David Reese donates $15,000 to Taxpayers PAC, and then they turn around, and that was in September, and then in October, Taxpayers PAC turns around and cuts 3 checks to Jace Reineveld's campaign. One for $7,200, one for $3,000, and one for $4,000. And those checks were made out to him, or those payments to his, those donations to his campaign came over a 9-day period in October. So who is David Reese? Well, David Reese is a far-right Christian nationalist minister, pastor in Arizona. He has preached in the past that men only have a, quote, duty to build up wealth in order to win public office so that they can, quote, rule. That is one of the central philosophies of this church called the Puritan Reformed Church in Phoenix that he is the pastor of. He also argues that government should enforce the 10 commandments, specifically the first 4 commandments. Thou shalt have no other God before me. Thou shalt honor the Sabbath and keep it holy. The government should enforce those. Recently, he has said that in order for someone to become a citizen of the U.S., they should be required to agree to a covenant, form a covenant to uphold whatever the official religion is, which is all code for no Muslims in the country, Christians only, and you have to have a covenant to become a Christian or to follow Christianity to become a citizen of the United States. So this is the guy who gave $15,000 to this PAC and then routed it into Jace Reineveld's campaign. Reese is also a businessman. He has an investment firm called Reese Fund, which invests in Christian companies. He also owns several other companies, including Armored Republic, which makes body armor. And if you go to their website is wild. If you go to their website, they have a video there with some of their product demonstrations, and it's guys wearing body armor, modeling body armor, with the words "Christ is King" all over it in huge graphics. It is a wild, wild website, but he owns that as well. So what is the connection between David Rees and Jace Reineveld? Well, let me tell you, it's his dad. And that's one of the things that I had to find as I was digging through corporate records today. Rees is listed as the president of a company called Suncoast Glass Holdings, which was formed in 2024 in Arizona. According to the business records, one of the directors, one of the officers of this group is Daniel Reineveld, who is Jace Reineveld's dad. I found the articles of incorporation, and just to let you know where they are coming from, the articles of incorporation for this Suncoast Glass Holdings on the Arizona Corporation Commission's website, they say, quote, "The company is formed for the glory of God according to Scripture alone, and to engage in any unlawful act or activity for which corporations may be organized under the Arizona Business Corporation Act." So that's the connection. That's how you get from Christian nationalist pastor to local Ogden school board candidate. It's through Ogden city council candidate, and through his dad. Now, Daniel Reineveld is also an investor in Jace's business, Alpine Gold Ogden. It's one of those businesses that helps people use gold as currency. His dad is an investor, and he's also partners in a group called Sovereign Financial Investments with Jace. So they're in business together. So there's the connection. That's how you get from David Rees to Jace Reineveld. But that's not where this story ends, because, okay, so you have a far-right Christian nationalist minister who's business partners with a dad and trying to get some money to this guy's campaign. That's not the whole thing, though, because it looks like the reason why that money was going into Reineveld's campaign was to pay his consultants, a company called Red Mountain Direct. Since July, Reineveld's campaign has paid Red Mountain Direct almost $30,000 for campaign consulting, yard signs, printing, and mailers. The founder of Red Mountain Direct is a man by the name of Zach Lautenschlager. And guess what? Zach Lautenschlager is the guy who formed Taxpayers PAC. He's the president of the PAC that routed these donations to the campaign from the Arizona pastor. And it looks like that money went to pay him. So that's the whole twist. That's what I spent a good portion of my day today unraveling, trying to figure that out. And yes, it's just a city council race, but I think it's kind of important to show just these connections and some of the links that people are going to try to get money and obscure where money is coming from in these political races. And if you take these illegal campaign donations out of Reineveld's campaign, and they are illegal campaign donations, I'll get back to this in a second, but Scott Rock says, I was confusing Rees with Douglas Wilson and their crazy far-right pastor. I think they're birds of a feather. David Rees he's not incredibly well known. He's got a podcast, and I've dug through some of that, but he's not as prominent as some of the other people. But this whole scheme that I spent a good portion of my day unraveling has money going from an Arizona pastor into this PAC to a candidate and then to his consultant. And the consultant was the one who formed the PAC to take in the money to give it to the candidate so he could pay the consultant. It's a huge pretzel of financial shenanigans. And if you take these illegal campaign donations out of the money that Jace Reineveld has raised, it really shows that he does not have a lot of support among the public. He has donated nearly $17,000 of his own money to the operation. His dad gave $1,500, which is the legal limit. The company he owns with his dad, Sovereign Financial Services, gave $1,500, which is the legal limit. You take all of that out, and he has raised $850 from 2 donors. Everything else has either come from his pocket, his dad, the company he owns with his dad, or this pastor, and he's going to be able to keep $1,500 of it, but he can't keep all $15,000 or $14,000. But that's how he was funding his campaign. And you know, one could easily make the case that this money was coming in because he couldn't afford it anymore. He couldn't afford to pay this consultant. One literature nut on Instagram says, wow, gerrymandering and dark money. It's so gross and disheartening. Yeah, it is. But again, and I say this all the time, it's important for people to understand how this works. And it's hard to dig this stuff out. Your eyes will glaze over. You have to know where you're looking. There are some databases out there. It's taken me years to figure out where to even start looking. It can be intimidating, but I love doing it. I really enjoy digging through, finding all this stuff, trying to figure out how it all fits together. Nathan Detroit on YouTube says, are they involved with the Goldback folks? I don't know. That's a whole nother thing where the legislature, once they were trying to figure out, creating a gold reserve here in the state, and then they wanted to have like a debit card, allowing people to buy money using that, and they were going to get a vendor. I've written some story on that. I've written some stories on that. And the person who, and this will probably not surprise anybody, but the person who was advising the legislature on this, not only advising the legislature, but advising State Treasurer Marlo Oaks, is a guy who is a complete conspiracy theorist who has talked about COVID being engineered as part of the Great Reset theory. And if you don't know what that is, people who thought that COVID was designed to turn us all into slaves for billionaires, like we aren't already. But that is one of the people who is advising state leaders, including State Treasurer Marlo Oaks, on this policy to allow the use of gold as a currency in the state, creating a payment system where people can use a debit card or some sort of credit card or an app to withdraw money that they deposit into a repository that is run by the state. And when the legislature wasn't going to fund it, there was going to be some setup costs that the legislature didn't want to fund. This guy stepped in and he said, "Oh, I'll fund it. I will pay for that." Now, thankfully, this didn't pass. It didn't get all the way through. But this is the kind of people who are treated as experts. He wrote a book called Pirate Money, and I read it. I wish I hadn't because it's awful, but it is just chock-a-block full of conspiracy theories. And they're trying to get everybody in the legislature to read this book. This person has been a featured speaker at the Utah Eagle Forum convention where he got a rousing round of applause, a rousing ovation. He's treated very seriously, and his ideas are not. His ideas are conspiracy theories. And you see that more and more happening up in the legislature. We're going to have another chemtrails bill this year. You know, when jets are flying overhead and you can see the contrails? A normal person would say, "Oh, that's contrails. That's what happens when jets fly at high altitude." Conspiracy theorists look at that and say, that's the government spraying chemicals to make us all slaves or mind control us. We can't have that, so we're going to ban that here in Utah, and we're going to pass a law to make it so you can't do that, and we're going to have some sort of government enforcement. That's where we are in 2025, 2026. Senator Ron Winterton ran that bill last year, and he's dead serious. He believes this. The quote he gave me was something along the lines of, you see these planes flying over the Salt Lake Valley and you know something's not right because they're leaving those contrails in the air. But that's where we are. Jess says, thanks for all you do. I have to go, but please answer my message if you can. Thank you. She said, do you know anything about the two guys running for Clearfield mayor? I really haven't paid much attention to that, unfortunately. I'm sorry. Just a lot of these things happening all at once. There's a lot of elections. I'll try to look into it and get you some information. I'm pretty sure I can make a couple of calls on that. Scott Rock says, speaking of books that ruin your brain, anything by Tim Ballard. Well, he's back in the news, and he's trying to rehabilitate his image. He's been interviewed in a couple of places. I don't know if he's going to get the boost from Glenn Beck and the Utah Eagle Forum. Eagle Forum, they were all in on Tim Ballard until those lawsuits hit, which have been dismissed, obviously. But it's not a good look. And they dropped him like a hot potato. Like, Tim who? Was basically the response from Gail Ruzicka. But he was a rock star for them. Don't know if we'll see that again. Don't know if we'll see him back. Okay, I've been talking for about an hour. If anybody has any last-minute comments or questions, now is your time. Put it in the chat. As I said, this will be available as a podcast tomorrow. I will put that out on the channel. You can go to my website, utahpoliticalwatch.news, and subscribe to the podcast there. I'll also put it up on YouTube and probably Facebook as well, edited down for some of the technical stuff. But it will be available tomorrow in case you missed any portion of this. As we wrap up this evening, I hope everybody has a happy Halloween. Don't cause too much trouble while you're out there. I did see someone on social media say, and I agree with this, trunk or treat is stupid, because I grew up in the era of Halloween where we had to go out into the night by ourselves and risk whatever laid out there to get our candy, whatever lay in wait for us to get our candy. And now kids aren't doing that. I feel like I might go and get some large candy bars for the kids that come to my house who actually brave the night to come and get some treats. They need to be rewarded. But, I mean, I agree. Trunk or treat, making kids soft. Anyway. Hope you have a happy Halloween. I would like to, if you haven't already, go to my website, utahpoliticalwatch.news, and sign up for my newsletter. It's for free. Sign up for the podcast. Subscribe to the podcast. That's also free. If you feel like it, you can throw me a couple of bucks through the tip jar. Every little bit helps. Or you can become a paid subscriber and you get a few extra things. That means you can get in on the on our Discord. You'll be able to comment on articles. You get some subscriber only articles, and that's $5 a month. I'm an independent journalist. I'm not funded by any corporations. Corporations don't own me, which is great because you see what is happening at CBS News. They just laid off a bunch of people, laid off a lot of really good news people. That's never good for the public being informed. But there's a lot of independent journalists out there now who are dipping their toes into the water, trying to make this work. I'm trying to make this work. I've received a lot of great support so far. I appreciate everybody who has done that so far. We're growing, not as fast as I'd like. It's never as fast as you like. Just honestly, and I'll be honest with you here. I was looking at my numbers. I launched this about a year ago, and since then I've probably made about $30,000. That's how much I've made in terms of subscriptions. And this is my full-time job. And I've got expenses, software, I've got my time, equipment, subscriptions to things. I have to pay for the streaming, I have to pay for internet. So there are fixed costs. So, I love doing this, but it's not great for my wallet. So again, if you feel like what I do is important, you want to support it, go to my website. There's a tip jar there, or you can become a subscriber. Nathan Detroit says, for Clearfield, the only signs I've seen are for the multi-term incumbent Mark Shepard. Has been kind of a quiet municipal election season, which does not make me confident that 2026 is going to be a walk in the park. That's going to be nuts. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. Got to get those VPN ads going, Brian. Yeah, right. Well, maybe. I think the VPN is important. I won't. I've been approached by people who want me to do crypto. I'm like, no, absolutely not. I've been approached by people who want me to promote gambling. No, gambling is awful. Sports betting, absolutely not. I just look at the stuff that's happening, and it's horrible. That's just not something that I would want to do. I will never do that sort of thing. I've been approached by it, but I turn it down. Because I'm making a go of it this way, because I'd rather be I'd rather be accountable to you, my listeners, my viewers, than anybody else. Anyway, we're going to end it for the night here. Last thing. Kelly Mousley, what do you know about Tawny McKay running for mayor in Riverton? I know that she is the wife of State Senator Dan McKay. I know that she got smoked in the primary, came in second. And I know that Senator Dan McKay has promised that if she wins mayor, he will not run for re-election in 2026. But he said in a very cute way that he will not run for re-election to the Utah State Senate. I think he wants to run for Congress. He's wanted to run for Congress for a long time. I think that's what his next goal is. So I'm not sure how that's going to play out. I do know that she did not, that Tawny McKay came in second, and it was not close during that August primary election. But they have the second round for a reason, and you have to win, 50 plus 1 will get you in, and they had, I think, 4 candidates during the primary. So I'll be watching along with you on Tuesday as those results roll in. Maybe we'll do a live on Wednesday. I don't know if we'll do anything on Tuesday evening, but we'll probably do a live on Wednesday to talk through some of the results as they come in. Again, okay, that's enough for me this evening. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. My website, utahpoliticalwatch.news. Please go over there, sign up for my newsletter, throw some bucks in the tip jar if you feel like it. Have a great Halloween. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we'll talk to you again next week.